Parasites are of two types, ectoparasites and endoparasites. The quail bird is going to lay eggs in the nest of the crow. What is commensalism? It's an interaction or relationship in which one organism is benefited and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. Hello dear students. Myself B. Shobarani from the Department of Biology, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence. I'll be completing all the concepts of this very interesting chapter called Organism and Population in this session 8. Hope you can see this beautiful picture. So in today's session, I'll be discussing about the remaining population interactions that is very important in this chapter called Organism and Population. You can see here the flower is pollinated by the honey bee. So here both are benefited. How is the honey bee benefited? As you know, the honey bee goes to the flower. Without any rewards will it go? No. What is the reward for the honeybee? That is a sweet of a flower called nectar, and at the same time the flower gets pollinated. So that is what is a very, very important interaction. So what am I going to discuss in this today's session? That is about the remaining concepts. As I said in the last session, we discussed about parasitism. So as we have come across in parasitism, the parasite resides in the body of the host, and there the parasite is benefited but the host is not benefited, but it is harmed. So parasites are of two types, ectoparasites and endoparasites. What are ectoparasites and what are endoparasites? What are ectoparasites? The very word itself will tell you. Ecto means what? Outside. Endo means what? Inside. The parasites which reside outside the body of the host, that remain attached to the outside the body of the host, such parasites are called ectoparasites. And such ectoparasites will have certain adhesive organs like suckers to attach themselves to the host body. In case of endoparasites, the endoparasites are those parasites which reside inside the body of the host. Now let us see what are ectoparasites and endoparasites. Here you can see the ectoparasite called lice, and here you can see the endoparasite called ascaris, that is, which is otherwise called roundworm. Also you might have come across ticks and mites, and even leech, then the lice. All these are called as ectoparasites. So what are ectoparasites? The parasites that live outside the host. Example, lice in man, human, ticks on dogs, copepods on marine fish, cuscuta growing on the edge plant. All these are called as what? Ectoparasites. Examples, as I said, are very important. So try to explain the concepts with suitable examples. So good many number of examples are given. Can't you all remember? 2 to 3 examples or minimum 2 examples is a must. Now, what are endoparasites? The parasites that live inside the host, inside the body of the host is called as endoparasites. Like for example, like liver fluke, roundworm in man. So this is about the parasitism, ectoparasitism and endoparasitism. So what are ectoparasites? The parasites that live outside the host body. Like example, lice in human, ticks on dogs, copepods on marine fish, cuscuta growing on the edge plant. What are endoparasites? The parasites that live inside the host, like the liver fluke, roundworm, etc. in man. Hope you have understood what are ectoparasites and what are endoparasites with these two very important examples. Now, what are the adaptations of endoparasites? As I said, what are the adaptations for ectoparasites? They'll have suckers to attach themselves to the body of the host. So what will be the features that are adapted by the endoparasite to reside inside the body of the host. So loss of unnecessary sense organ. They don't need any sense organ. Endoparasites don't need any sensory organ because they reside inside the body. And presence of adhesive suckers. So they also don't need what? Adhesive attached to the host. So they don't need any attachment organs. So presence of like is not required. Is not required. Why it is not required? Because they are not ectoparasites. So they don't need any organ of attachment because they reside inside the body. Then absence of digestive organs, high reproductive capacity, complex life cycle with many hosts. So what are the adaptations of endoparasites? Loss of unnecessary sense organs, loss of adhesive organs, then absence of digestive organ. Why don't they need digestive organ? Because they depend upon the food that is prepared by the host body. They are not going to prepare their own. So absence of digestive organs. Then high reproductive capacity and complex life cycle with many hosts. Intermediate host. So you can see the beautiful picture of a fish here. Then what is intermediate host? So you have come across what is parasitism, what are the types of parasitism, what is this intermediate host? So for example, like to complete their life cycle they require two hosts. So the one which is in between the host and the parasite, the intermediate host, that is the one which is in between the host and the parasite, is called as what? Intermediate host. The parasite with complex life cycle, where it uses vector to parasite primary host, is called as intermediate host. Like liver fluke uses snail or fish to reach man. See here, snail and fish is called as what? Intermediate host. This is called as what? Intermediate host. So, right. So it is. This host is in between the liver fluke and man. In between. Intermediate means what? In between. Right. Then effects of parasite on host. As I said, parasitism. In parasitism, one is benefited, the other one is harmed. That is harmed. Here, who is benefited? Parasitism means what? One is the host, the other one is the parasite. So it is an interaction between a host and a parasite. Here the host is harmed, whereas the parasite is benefited. So here it is minus, here it is plus. So here the parasite is benefited, but who is affected? The host is affected. So effects of parasite on host. It may reduce the rate of physiology of host, like growth and reproduction. So it is going to affect the physiological processes of the host, as you find the parasite inside the body of the host. Obviously it is going to disturb the physiological functions that is going on inside the body, affecting what? Affecting growth and reproduction of the host. Then it reduces the density of host population. So obviously the number will be reduced. They die. The host which is affected by the parasite will die, and obviously their population or their growth will be affected. Next, it weakens the host and render the host more vulnerable to predation. So what it makes the host body very weak. Even if it is not dead, even if it is not going to die, but the body will be weak. So it will be prone to what? Prone to other predators. So it is vulnerable to predators. So as I said, the host is not benefited. Here it is harmed, whereas the parasite is benefited. So I repeat. So what is intermediate host? The parasite with complex life cycle. So usually we come across this intermediate host in such parasites which have a complex life cycle and need two hosts to complete their life cycle. For example, like liver fluke uses snail or fish to reach what? Man. So there are two intermediate hosts. There are two hosts here. One is the snail or the fish and the other one is man. So this is called as the intermediate host. Then effects of parasite on host. It may reduce the rate of physiology of the host like growth and reproduction. Then it reduces the density of host population. Then it is going to weaken the host body and render the host more vulnerable to predation. Then brood parasitism. It's a very, very good example, and I think all of you might have come across this. Is coil bird. I think all of you know coil bird is known for its sweet voice. But when you look at the bird, it more or less looks like a crow. It more or less looks like a crow, but you can identify it with the eyeball, right? So coil, which is a very, very known bird for its sweet voice, is almost resembling a crow. But many a times I think we come across the coil bird is going to lay eggs in the nest of the crow. And this crow will mistake the eggs of the coil as its own eggs, and it will start hatching the eggs. So it is like, it is coil bird's job is only to lay eggs in the crow nest, and the remaining part of hatching and everything is taken care by the crow. So this type of interaction between the coil and the crow is called as brood parasitism. Here you can see the bird has laid the eggs and it has been hatched. So because both the eggs, the coil bird's egg and the crow bird's egg resemble the same, so crow will mistake it to be its own eggs and it will start hatching it. Such a type of interaction is called brood parasitism, and this concept called brood parasitism is usually asked in the examination. This is a very, very important concept which is usually asked in the examination, right? So in this type of parasitism, birds are the parasites in the host, and the host where one bird lays eggs in the parasite. So here what will happen is crow is the host and coil is the parasite. So where a parasite, the nest of other bird or host for incubation. So what will it do? So this coil will lay eggs in the nest of the crow, and the crow will mistake those eggs to be its own eggs, and it will start incubating it, hatching it. And this type of interaction between the coil and the crow is like a type of parasitism called brood parasitism. The coil, that is the cuckoo bird, laying egg in crow's nest, is a very, very good example. Next, the crow, as I said, can't identify cuckoo bird's eggs because the eggs of cuckoo and crow are similar. Both the eggs, if at all the color was different, maybe it would have identified. But as I said, the crow and the cuckoo bird or the coil is almost same color, black in color. So obviously even the eggs are also of the same color. So that is the reason why the crow will mistake the eggs of the cuckoo bird as its own eggs, and it will start incubating it. See how it utilizes the crow's advantage, right? Now, and morphologically with respect to their size, shape and color. See, the eggs of the cuckoo bird has the same size, shape and color as that of the crow's eggs, and that is the reason why the crow will mistake those eggs to be of its own kind, and it will start incubating it. And such a type of interaction is called as what? Brood parasitism. Hope you have understood this concept. And what is the example you are going to give? Cuckoo bird laying eggs in the crow's nest. So what is the example for brood parasitism? Cuckoo bird laying eggs in the crow's nest. Why? The crow can't identify cuckoo bird's eggs because the eggs of the cuckoo and the crow are similar morphologically with respect to their size, shape and color. That is the reason why it will mistake it. So here we can find that one is benefited. Here in brood parasitism, here the coil or the cuckoo bird and the crow. Here this is benefited and this is neither benefited nor harmed. So neither it is benefited nor harmed. If it was plus, it was a benefit, and if it was minus, then it was harmed. But here it is neither benefited nor harmed, right? Moving on to commensalism. You can see this epiphyte, orchid. epiphyte, right? So commensalism. What is it? Is again another type of population interaction where it is an interaction or relationship in which one organism is benefited and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. So here it's an interaction or relationship in which one organism is benefited and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. Examples. Orchid grows on mango tree as an epiphyte. So you can see an orchid growing. So here the interaction is between orchid and the mango tree. So here the orchid is benefited and this is neither benefited nor harmed. So here who is benefited here? The orchid is benefited. It is getting a space to grow. It's an epiphyte that grows on the other, top of the other. And it has a very important tissue called velamen. Epiphytes have an important, very special tissue. You can call it as a special tissue which absorbs the atmospheric moisture. So because it is not having roots, so roots will be found in below the soil because it is above the mango tree. So from where does it get the water content? By absorbing the moisture from the atmosphere. So it has a special tissue called velamen tissue which is going to absorb the atmospheric moisture, and that is how it is going to get water. As you know, water is very important for what? For photosynthesis. So what is commensalism? It is an interaction or relationship in which one organism is benefited and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. What is the example you are going to give? Orchid that grows on a mango tree as an epiphyte, and the other example what you are going to give is barnacles growing on back of whale, then association of grazing cattle and egrets. I think all of you might have come across. This is a very, very important point. Hope you might have seen many a cattle just wandering around, and above the cattle you can see some birds, right? Why are the birds found on the body of the cattle? Because as you know, the cattle will have ectoparasites called ticks. Ticks and mites. So when the ticks and mites are found on the body of the domestic animal like cattle, the birds go and sit on their body and will start eating the ticks and mites. But here who is benefited? The egret bird is benefited, but the cattle is neither benefited nor harmed. So association of grazing cattle and egrets. Then clownfish lives in the tentacles of sea anemone. Then sea anemone on hermit crab. See, good many number of examples are given, and this commensalism is very important from examination point of view. So I keep telling some are very important. Please make note of it as these are commonly asked questions in the PU board examination. So what is commensalism? It's an interaction or relationship in which one organism is benefited and the other organism is neither benefited nor harmed. One example is what? Orchid grows on the mango tree. Here you can see this orchid. It's an epiphyte. Epi means what? Outside. Phyte means what? Plant. Epi means what? Outside. So it is found outside the body of the other plant. So next is what? Barnacles growing on the back of whale. Then association of grazing cattle on egrets. Then clownfish lives in the tentacles of sea anemone. Then sea anemone on hermit crab. So here one is benefited, the other is neither benefited nor harmed. In parasitism, one is benefited and the other one is harmed. The cattle stir up and flush out the insects from grass. Then the egrets easily catch the insects. So, you know, they stir their body. Usually the cattle, you can see, they're stirring their body. So, obviously the ticks and mites will come about the body and the birds will eat those insects. Then you can see this beautiful clownfish. You know why it is called as clownfish? A clown, how they'll wear different colored clothes. In a similar way, here you can see how it is differently colored. Hence the name clownfish. And clownfish protected in sea anemone. So the tentacles of sea anemone, you know, the tentacles of sea anemone have what? Stinging cells, which will, so that the clownfish living in tentacles escape from predators. See how it is trying to protect itself from the predators by hiding itself in the tentacles of sea anemone. So it is one form. Who is benefited here? The clownfish is benefited. It is benefited. But what about the sea anemone? Is it harmed or benefited? No, neither it is harmed nor benefited. Here, this is benefited. The clownfish is benefited, but the sea anemone is neither benefited nor harmed. So that is about the clownfish protected in sea anemone. As I said, the tentacles of sea anemone have what? Produce what? Stinging cells, which will kill the other animals. So obviously it will not hurt the clownfish. So it takes it is taking a protection in the tentacles of the clownfish so that nobody will come near the clownfish to eat it, because they are afraid of what? They are afraid of the stinging cells of the sea anemone. Then mutualism. This is a very important population interaction. You might find this. These are the E. coli bacteria. E. coli bacteria found in the gut of humans. So I think all of us know bacteria are both useful and harmful to mankind. How are they harmful? By causing diseases in human beings. How are they useful? Like you have come across saprophytic bacteria. We also come across E. coli bacteria. They just reside inside the body, inside the gut, that is the digestive system, but they are not going to harm. So here mutualism is what? Mutualism is an interaction where both are benefited, where both are benefited mutually. So here it is plus plus. So what is mutualism? An interaction between two organisms where both are benefited mutually. Examples, we'll take the example. Symbiotic relationship of algae and fungi in lichen. I think all of you know lichen. I'll show you the picture. Then mycorrhiza, fungi and root mod relationship. So mycorrhiza is having an association between the fungi and the roots. Then rhizobium bacteria, all of you know that rhizobium bacteria is found in the root nodules of leguminous plants, and they help in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. So this is an association between what? Fungi and root. Symbiotic association between algae and lichen. Then mycorrhiza, fungi and root. Rhizobium with leguminous plants. Then anabina with the coralloid roots of cycas. E. coli living in the gut of human. Then anabina bacteria and azolla, a pteridophyte. Then yucca and pronuba moth relationship. I think this I will explain. I think all of us know that there is one moth called pronuba moth which goes and lays the eggs inside the flower of yucca plant. See, imagine, and the moth will lay eggs inside the flower, and obviously the flower gets pollinated as the pollen grains stick to the legs of the moth and gets pollinated. See, both are benefited here, and by the time the larvae hatches, the pollen grains are released. So here it is it's an interaction between the flower will open. So yucca and pronuba moth relationship. So here what are the examples you are going to give for mutualism? An interaction between two organisms where both are benefited mutually. So plus plus here. And what are the examples you are going to give? Good number of examples are given for mutualism. So symbiotic relationship, algae and fungi in lichen. Mycorrhiza, that is fungi and root relationship. Rhizobium bacteria and root nodule relationship in leguminous plants. Anabina bacteria and coralloid roots of cycas. E. coli bacteria and that is the gut of human. Anabina bacteria and azolla, which is a pteridophyte. Then yucca and pronuba moth. Then lichens. Here you can see this beautiful picture of lichens. I think all of you know lichens are also called as pollution indicators. They are usually found on the bark of the trees in those areas which is not polluted. For example, like if you go to Madikeri, like particularly to Iruppu Falls, Iruppu Falls is that particular area is totally non-polluted. So you can find lichen growing on plants only in those areas where you don't find pollution. Can you expect in Bangalore? Definitely not. And Bombay, Delhi, I think Delhi is the most polluted city in our country. So imagine lichen growing in such area is something which is impossible, right? So lichen is an example for mutualism, and it is an association between algae and fungi present in lichen, shows symbiotic relationship when they benefit mutually. The fungi, how are they benefited? How both are benefited? The fungi helps for water and mineral absorption, and the algae helps fungi by synthesizing food material. See here how they are benefited here. How it is an association between fungi and algae. How are they benefited? The fungi helps for water and mineral absorption, and the algae helps fungi by synthesizing food material. So both are benefited. It is plus plus, right? Then we'll take one more example of mycorrhizae. It is a mutualism relationship between fungi and roots of higher plants. So it is an association between fungi and roots of higher plants. Here the fungi will help the plants to absorb water and minerals, and at the same time in turn plants supply carbohydrates for fungi. See how beautiful association they have. Here also both are benefited. Here also you can find that both are benefited. So you can take good many number of examples for mutualism, and both are very, very important. So what is lichen? It's an association between a fungi and a algae, where the fungi will help for water and mineral absorption, and algae helps fungi by synthesizing food materials. So mycorrhiza, it's an association between fungi and the roots of higher plants, where the fungi helps the plants to absorb water and minerals. In turn, what will the plant supply? Supply carbohydrates for fungi. Here you can see this beautiful picture of lichen. So plant and animals mutualism. So here you can see the beautiful picture of insect. It is, this whole process is nothing but called pollination. Here, this is also a very good example for mutualism. How it is an example, how it is a good example for mutualism? I think all of you know that what is pollination. As you know, the gametes, the male gamete and the female gamete has to come closer together to facilitate a very important event to happen, that is fertilization. As you know, plants are stationary, so definitely the pollen grains have to come and fall on the stigmatic surface of a flower to enable fertilization. So who are the agents which bring about the process of pollination? Maximum number of flowers are pollinated through insects. As you all know that the pollination through insects is called what? Entomophily. And you know, the insects will not visit a flower without any reward or without any gift. So what is the reward the insect is going to get from the flower? That is the nectar. That is the sweet of a flower is called what? Nectar. And how is the flower benefited? It is getting what? Pollinated. And pollination is very important for what? For a very important event to happen, that is called fertilization. See here, both are benefited. So here the insect is benefited, so also the flower is also benefited. So here insect is benefited, so also the flower. So both are benefit, and it is a very good example for what? Mutualism. It is a very good example for mutualism. So plants provide food for animals and in turn get help for pollination and seed dispersal. Then plants provide pollen and nectar for pollinators, juicy and nutrition fruits for seed dispersal. So both are benefited. Now we'll move on to next very important concept called co-evolution of mutualism. What is it? A species of flower is pollinated by only one species of wasp. That is, a relationship is evolved between flower of fig plant and wasp tightly with one another. That means, I think all of you might have come across a fruit called fig. So there is one particular type of wasp which is going inside the flower and going to lay the eggs. So obviously what will happen? The pollen grains stick to the legs and the flower get pollinated. So it is like both are very much closely interrelated. The female wasp uses fruit for egg laying and developing seeds for nourishing larvae. So this is an example for co-evolution of mutualism. Next, very important is sexual deceit. Next very important concept is called sexual deceit. Deceit means what? Cheating. Here all of you can see this beautiful flower. Here you can see this resembles what? Moth. Right? It resembles a female moth. And so the male moth will get mistaken by seeing this as, and it pseudo-copulates. Pseudo-copulation. So pseudo-copulates, and it is called what? Sexual deceit. So it is cheating. So this flower is one type of cheating the male moth, and obviously the male moth will mistake it to be a female moth because the flower is designed in such a way. See what a beauty of this nature, right? See how it is not man-made. So right, it is natural. So that is called sexual deceit. So what is sexual deceit? It is a pollination phenomenon where the flower resembles or gets modified like a female bee, and you can see the female bee to attract the male bee for pollination by pseudo-copulation. So here we can find that it looks more or less like what? Female bee. And here the male bee will mistake it to be a female bee and pseudo-copulates. But it is not rewarded because it is not true. It is not a insect, right? So obviously, even if it pseudo-copulates, reproduction will not take place. One is a flower and the other one is an insect. So totally two different species. So in Mediterranean orchid Ophrys. So this is an example for Ophrys. Example, it's a Mediterranean orchid called Ophrys, where the main petal of its flower resembles the female bee. See how it is designed. See, when you look at it, doesn't it look like some animal? So it is nothing but looks like a female bee. Right? See the petals along inside? You can see this. So what will happen? The male bee gets attracted towards it thinking that it is a female bee and is ready to copulate. But the type of copulation that happens here is between a flower and a bee. So obviously you call it as what? Pseudo means what? False. Pseudo means false copulation. Copulation means what? Fusion, right? Next. So in Mediterranean orchid Ophrys, main petal of its flower resembles the female bee. So the male bee perceives it as female bee and pseudo-copulates with flower. During this process, the male bee dusts pollen grains when the bee visits the next flower where pollination is resulted. See how it has benefited. Here both are benefited actually. So, but here actually the flower is benefited, but the male bee is not benefited. Right? It is having what? Pseudo-copulation. This is a very good example for sexual deceit. Moving on to the very important one more interaction called commensalism. It is a type of interaction between two species where one is harmed and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. So, what is commensalism? It is a type of interaction between two species where one is harmed, definitely one is harmed, and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. So, it will be minus like this. Right? So, that is called commensalism. Now, let us come across with the symbols. Parasitism, it is one is plus, the other one is minus. And in mutualism, both are benefited. So it is plus plus. And in case of sexual deceit, one is benefited, the other is neither benefited nor harmed. Right? Then in case of commensalism, one is benefited, the other one is neither benefited nor harmed. In commensalism, one is harmed and the other one is neither benefited nor harmed. So all these population interactions are very important also from examination point of view. Hope you have understood this very interesting chapter called Organism and Population. Right. So, with this session, I have completed a very interesting chapter called Organism and Population. So, what am I going to start? So, in the next session, I'm going to start with the next very important chapter, chapter 6 of your syllabus called Molecular Basis of Inheritance. This is also a very, very interesting and an important chapter from examination point of view. So, I'll be back with this interesting chapter that is called Molecular Basis of Inheritance. So, till then, goodbye and thank you, dear second PUC students.